Brothers, welcome to another edition of Golden Insights. I'm James Bullard, and I'm here with Brother Bill Walker to talk about his experiences over the last 50 plus years in Kappa Alpha Psi. So, Brother Walker, why don't we start with where you were made?
Okay, I was made in Alpha Chapter, Indiana University, 1950. Alpha Chapter at that time was not necessarily a large chapter because Indiana University did not have a lot of minority members. There were about 150 blacks on Indiana's campus at that time, and we probably had 30, 35 Kappas.
Okay. Now, you were actually from that area, the Indiana area?
Yes, from Indianapolis, Indiana.
Right. And because of the historic occasion of the Alpha Chapter, did you know any of the founders or had any association with that? Can you share any experiences along that line?
The first founder that I knew was Elder Watson Diggs.
Wow.
He was a principal of School 42, which has subsequently been named for Elder Watson Diggs in Indianapolis. And my first encounter with him was as a Boy Scout. I went to him to get a reading merit badge.
Okay.
And then because of the segregation that we had at that time in Indianapolis, all of the families and groups that lived in that central district sort of mingled with each other. So I got to see Elder Watson Diggs in social settings with my family.
Do you have any personal remembrances of him, of anything any particular characteristics he had, or anything that stood out about him that you'd like to share?
Well, he was a very distinguished gentleman, and he was, as I said, a principal of school, and I had actually an aunt, not truly an aunt, but one of the, what you would call a calabash aunt,
Okay.
who actually taught at that school. So I got to see him in action as a principal, and he was very highly respected in Indianapolis at that time. I did not know him that long because I think he died probably around 1947, 48,
Right.
something like that.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the first founder. Did you know additional founders?
The other two founders that I knew were Ezra D. Alexander,
Okay.
who was a physician in Indianapolis, and then I knew very well Guy L. Grant, who was a dentist in Indianapolis. He was our dentist. And also, when I was in college, my roommate dated and subsequently married his niece.
Okay.
And so we got to go to Guy Grant's house and see him. And Guy Grant actually came down to Indiana for some of the affairs that we had at the Kappa House. And Guy Grant, I guess Guy Grant probably lived until, I guess, in the 70s, I think.
So what was he like?
He was a very gregarious individual.
Was he?
Yes.
Okay.
And very smart and very much into Kappa. He was probably the most interesting Kappa that I had ever met in Indianapolis out of the other founders.
Okay.
Ezra Alexander was rather reserved.
Okay. And he was interesting because of the fact that he was talkative and outgoing.
He was talkative, outgoing, and into a lot of activities.
Okay.
And then I got to also see him in a different light because of the fact that my roommate actually married his niece.
Wow. That's an outstanding bit of history, and thank you for sharing that also. Now, as I understand it, you have some pretty good Kappa history within your own family, right? 3 generations?
Well, we have 3 generations. Yes, we have Tommy, who is Mr. Kappa here in Alexandria, Fairfax, and then my grandson.
And the past postmark.
Yeah, Tommy is a past postmark. And both of them are very active in the chapter here.
Right.
So it's a great treat for us to go to a conclave or something, and here's 3 generations of Kappas.
Absolutely. And I served with your son he was the board of directors member as well.
Yes.
At the Eastern Province.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, that's great for the Walker family.
Yes, it is.
Right. Let's move on and talk about your professional career, because you've had a very distinguished personal career as well. Would you like to share some things about your personal career or business career?
Okay. I retired from the service, and when I retired from the service, I went to work for a company here, and subsequently formed my own company. company called Logistics Applications, which I sold probably 2 or 3 years ago. I had the company for about 20 years. We did logistical support services in and around this area. It was a small business, and it was fairly successful.
Not that small, right?
Well,
It was,
yeah, it was 345 people, I think, but
yeah, that's what
it
I
was
thought.
still considered.
Small means a lot of things, different people. I want to point that out. It was a very,
Right.
as you said, very successful business.
Yes.
Great. Excellent. Well, we've talked about your outstanding history with knowing members of the founders and knowing people within the greater Indiana community. You've talked about your legacy with your family as well, and your business that went well. Are there any other things that you'd like to share about Kappa Alpha Psi or anything else with us?
I think 2 other interesting things that had happened to me in the Kappas, again in Indianapolis. Lionel Artist, who was the first editor of the Kappa Journal, was closely associated with my family. In fact, his wife was godmother to my sister. And the other person that I think it was very interesting to know was Frank Summers. Frank Summers, as you know, was one of our past Grand Pole Marks, and his son and daughter were students at Indiana. And we saw Frank Summers probably more than we even saw Guy Grant.
Wow.
During the 4 years that I was at Indiana. And he not only came down there, but spent a lot of time at the Kappa House. Frank Summers, I guess there's some question, and I don't know what is correct or not, but supposedly Frank Summers was the first pledge. I also think that Armstrong was also the first pledge.
Okay.
And I knew Armstrong also. He was a teacher at Alex High School, where I went to high school. And he lived, wow, I think he was 90-some years old when he died, and there was a large service for him when he passed in Indianapolis. But he was a teacher at Alex High School. So those were some of the other connections, which I thought were very significant because of the role that they played. And as you go back through the history of the Kappas, you'll find that Armstrong should have been a founder, but for some reason he missed during that period of time and came along, and actually ended up as the second Grand Pole Mark. He was a Grand Pole Mark after Diggs.
Well, Brother Walker, you have allowed us, through your golden insights, to have walked at the history of Kappa Alpha Psi, and some people that we know, and the people that have founded Kappa Alpha Psi, and other people that have done well within Kappa Alpha Psi, as have you and your family. Thank you again for sharing with us and golden insights, Brother Walker. We appreciate it.
I certainly enjoyed coming and talking to you today.
Okay.